Hello and welcome to Advanced Tuning Forks for Sound Healing. I am Becky Moriarty. If you have ever been to a sound healing level 1 class in person, then I'm sure that we have met each other. And I instruct in that class in Sarasota, in Clearwater, and in Fort Lauderdale. So we have probably met, but if we haven't, this is me. I am an instructor at Meditate School of Mindfulness in Fort Lauderdale. I also have my own business here in Sarasota called Suka Skin Spa and Mindfulness Center. I'm a mindfulness life coach, I'm a meditation coach, a master sound healer instructor, and an esthetician, doing lots of neat things in the world. I also make my own products and all sorts of things. John Bolio, who is one of the founding fathers of using tuning forks for sound healing. He has a lot of really awesome books out there. If you feel like you want to do some more reading, you want to do some deeper diving than what we're going to do here, he's a great place to start. There's also tons of other classes and things out there, but I'm in the middle of one of his books right now, and it is amazing. So one of his quotes is, "A fundamental principle of sound healing is that physical, emotional, and mental symptoms are being generated by an underlying energy field. Thus, if we change the energy field, then the physical, emotional, and mental behavior patterns will also change." This is so true for any sound healing instrument. As we learned in level 1, it's all about vibration. It's all about changing the energy, the neural pathways, and this is just another really awesome instrument to do that. So let's get started. So we're going to take a few minutes to recap here. If you took the level 1 course, which you did, we talked about some of these things. So a tuning fork's an acoustic resonator in the form of a two-pronged fork with the prongs or tines formed from a U-shaped bar of elastic metal, usually aluminum or steel, though in some cases quartz crystal. I've never seen the quartz crystal ones in person, but I'm sure they're fantastic. It resonates at a specific constant pitch when set vibrating by striking them against a surface or with an object, and emits a pure musical tone, and it emits that tone after a moment of allowing some of the high overtones to die out. The pitch that a particular tuning fork generates depends on the length of the two prongs. The two prongs can also be thicker or thinner. Just like crystal singing bowls, just like anything else, bigger bowls are thicker crystal. They make a different tone. Tuning forks are the same exact way. Tuning forks used to be used to produce a standard pitch to tune other musical instruments, though they can also be used to calibrate radar guns, gyroscopes. They're used in clocks and watches. But now I would say that tuning forks are primarily used for sound healing, which is pretty cool. This is an unweighted tuning fork here in this picture. So tuning forks are used by practitioners in a variety of ways. Tuning forks, usually the C512 Hz, used to be used to assess a patient's hearing. I don't believe that they use them too much anymore. They now have a lot of electronic ways to do that. I think there are some people who do still keep tuning forks around for healing, or for hearing tests, but I don't think they ever use them. The lower pitched forks, usually C128, that's the low C, are also used to check vibration sense as part of an exam of the peripheral nervous system. They are commonly used alongside healing modalities such as massage, shiatsu, and crystal therapies, but also in individual sound sessions. And they can be used therapeutically either as a standalone instrument, or they can be combined with other sound tools as part of an integral sound healing session. The U shape of the tuning fork produces a very pure tone, which means they have a unique sonic precision, unlike most instruments. There are two aspects to this. One is that most of the vibrational energy is created at a fundamental frequency with little audible overtones or harmonics. The reason for this is the frequency of the first overtone is about 2.5 octaves above the fundamental. With most other instruments, the first overtone is 1 octave above the fundamental. So when a single fork is struck, little of the energy goes into the overtone modes. Also, the overtone frequencies in a struck fork die out relatively quickly, leaving only that fundamental note as a pure tone. The pure tones of tuning fork, combined with other compact, lightweight form, make them an ideal instrument for sound healing. They can be moved around very easily around the aura, the sound biofield of clients, and they are held near their ears and placed on their bodies. All parts of the body can act as a resonator for tuning forks, though certain bones, such as the sacrum, sternum, and cranium, are especially good for this. When I start out my facials, I actually do some weighted Om tuning forks on the forehead, down into the temples, down into like the jaw area, and it really helps to relax my client and ground them right in. So this means that tuning forks can be used effectively both on and off the body to balance the nervous system and etheric fields, induce relaxation, reduce stress, and enhance energy levels. They are, however, not typically used in group work, such as a sound bath, because their audible sounds are quite useless, struck together to amplify the sound harmonics. You don't really want to use them in group sound because you have to go around to each person and play them in their ears is basically what that means. And there's just not enough time in a group sound bath. You can, however, use these in an individual sound bath, and I actually use them a lot. I use them in the beginning of my individual sound bath, okay? So let's get into unweighted tuning forks. These little beauties right here. Unweighted tuning forks are most commonly used off the body. Typically, 2 tuning forks are employed that are cut to specific frequencies. There are 2 main ways. Placed close to both ears, they bring balance and alignment to the brain and nervous system. And the forks balance the left and right hemispheres of the brain, reduce brainwave activity to the alpha theta zone, and induce states of relaxation. Placed and moved in the subtle energy body above the chakra, the tuning forks open, harmonize, and balance the chakras aligned to the endocrine glands and nerve ganglia along the spinal cord. The forks help to provide a supportive energetic link and coordination between the chakras, which nourishes the vitality of the physical body, encourages emotional stability, and develops the mind. In order to work effectively with unweighted tuning forks in this way, it is vital to have a basic understanding of musical intervals and their effects. So now we're going to get into learning a little bit about musical intervals. This is by no means a super deep dive into any of this. This is scratching the surface on a lot of this, but this really is a great starting point. I really do encourage you to do more learning, to do more exploring, if tuning forks is something that really is very interesting to you. A musical interval is the resonance created by 2 notes. Each interval has a different vibratory function for healing and affecting consciousness. When 2 forks are sounded together, an interval is created which sends out a pulse that entrains the body and simultaneously tunes the nervous system. Different intervals have different effects on the body, emotions, mind, and spirit. To work with the intervals, ideally, you will need a set of 8 tuning forks. This set is called the harmonic spectrum set. I've seen it listed some places as a chakra tuning fork set. You just want to make sure that you get a low C and a high C note. So there will be 8 forks in the set instead of 7. So you'll have C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then high C. The common way of producing intervals with tuning forks involves using the low C fork in conjunction with all of the other forks. So you are going to hold the low C in your left hand. You will sound through, and this coming up after this, we're going to go through the different intervals, and this is how you would start out your sound session with this interval, and then you would get into protocols, okay? So the first interval we're going to look at is the first interval. It's the fundamental unison interval. This interval is created between the low C and the note sounded by the other fork. In this set, because you have a low C and a high C, this interval fundamental unison would be your low C and your high C played together, but you could also just play your low C in one ear and then move it to the other ear. In the fundamental or unison interval is the resonance of one note played more than once. In sound healing with tuning forks, it is one note, usually C, played in both ears. So you could do just the low C, played in the left ear, then played in the right ear, but you could also do your low C and your high C, and you would play them each 3 different times, and then switch hands and play them both 3 more times. That way the left and the right side get both notes played into them, because they are a little bit different in pitch. Again, if you have only one fork of the same note, then you should play the fork first to the left ear and then to the right ear. I have learned and always done, you're going to play that note 3 times into each ear. No matter what you're doing, 3 is the interval. We kind of talk about that a lot in level 1 too. We do everything in 3s. Body, mind, spirit, Father, Son, Holy Ghost, whatever it comes down to, that level of 3 just plays throughout, I think. If you have 2 forks of the same note, then you can play them both at the same time to each ear. This has the effect of calming the mind. Getting into the second interval, so you would start out with your 2 C's or your 1 C, then you would move your low C to your left hand and you would grab your D tuning fork out of that harmonic set, and you would play those 3 times into each ear, then put your C in your right hand, your D in your left hand, and you would play those 3 times. So, I'm just gonna, there's an instructional video that comes along with this module. I would really encourage you to watch that. So this C and D second interval creates dissonance. Dissonance is amazing for moving energy. Not everything we do is going to be harmony, and you don't want everything you do to be harmony. We need this dissonance to move things. So that's why this is the birth of movement. This interval is used in sound healing with tuning forks to disperse excessive energy in chakras and reduce muscle tension. So then you will have your C note in your left hand, and you will then put your D down, and you will pick up the E fork, and you will play them in both ears, then switch hands and play them again. And this third interval creates an expansive sonic space that helps us to connect with and expand our emotions. It enables us to release stuck emotions and build our motivation towards achieving our goals. The next interval is the fourth interval, C and F. The fourth interval helps us to awaken from our emotions. It grounds our thoughts and stabilizes hyper, obsessive, and manic states. So to start out with, we're working through all of these things to get this energy moving. The fifth interval is the most stimulating interval. It is used in sound healing with tuning forks to energize the chakras and the etheric and mental subtle energy bodies. It frees up our creative potential. Now, also, with this fifth interval, working with this harmonizing fifth interval created by 2 tuning forks off the body. If you use these in the ears, this is, frees up that creative potential. If you use this interval, the C and G, in the energy body or the subtle energy field, it is good for clients who experience a range of symptoms that defy easy medical diagnosis, such as unexplained emotional or physical pain, multiple allergies and digestive sensitivities, exhaustion, a deep feeling of not being grounded, often associated with a hypersensitive and overactive nervous and immune system, which is sometimes called hyperenergetic sensitivity syndrome, or HESS. These symptoms are often preceded by trauma during birth and a high incidence of childhood diseases that may have disrupted the body's supportive energetic system. So these are not just relegated to just being used in the ears. You can also use these intervals in the energy body as well. And for that fifth interval, it really, really does a lot. For the sixth interval, it is soft and sweet. It carries no tension and no stimulation, but it is gently expansive. That A note, that's your third eye. Think about it. It's so expansive and opening. It creates visions and inspiration, lifting our spirits. The seventh interval, C and B, this creates extreme tension that has immense power physically and spiritually. So that C and B, they're going to create a little bit of dissonance, and it creates that tension. But from that tension, from that dissonance is great power, which is pretty cool. So within your reading materials, you then have a table that details each interval and their associated physical, emotional, and mental benefits. And this is from John Beaulieu's book, Human Tuning. And I'm not going to take the time to go through all of these in this video, but just please read through those, because let's say we'll go to, let's say, that fifth interval that we were talking about. The fifth interval is general harmonizing and balancing effects of the chakras, heart and sympathetic nervous system, causes sphenoid bone to vibrate and move in harmonic patterns, helps pituitary gland to release opiates and cannabinoid receptors in the third ventricle of the brain, stimulates nitric oxide release, antibacterial, antiviral, enhances the immune system. And it is good for release of opiates, allows conscious awareness to move into higher states. A release of nitric oxide triggers the body to heal, detoxify, and take care of itself. That's what we're doing in sound healing. We're helping that release of nitric oxide, which does trigger our body into a healing state. It lifts depression, and it also helps with improved joint mobility. So definitely consider these intervals when you're doing sound healing, especially with these unweighted forks, because you can use these forks next to the ears, but again, you can also run these through the energy body, and they will really help enhance all of these things. So definitely read through this little chart that I gave you. And you don't need to memorize everything, but definitely get to know them. And then the last interval, which is the eighth interval, it's the CNC interval. Sorry, we didn't go over that before. And this creates an openness of sonic space. It brings a resolution between the lower and the higher aspects of our being. And it helps us transform and connect with our highest self, which is why I always like to end with that. I like to open with that CNC octave, and I like to end with that CNC octave interval. So there are two ways to sound tuning forks when working with the intervals. You can tap them simultaneously on a rubber activator. This technique is especially good when tuning forks are played close to the ears, because the second way that you can use them is by tapping them together. But this is going to create that metal on metal sound that sometimes when you're near the head or close to the ears can be very jarring for the client. I really love it when you're working through their energy body. I think it really rings out and almost makes them feel expansive, like all of their energy is moving out. But when you're working next to the head, next to the ears, you really want to consider getting one of those rubber activators, because you chime them, you bang them on those and then hold them up to the ears, and it just is not as jarring for them. And the technique of tapping them together is especially good when tuning forks are played over the physical body, away from the ears, in the mental, emotional, and subtle energy fields. But definitely you got to mess around, find your own way. This is just what I have learned. This is what John Beaulieu puts out there. This is what the Sound Healing Academy puts out there. But I have kind of deviated from some things because it's just what works for me. So you have to find what works for you. I'm just going to give you some things to think about along the way. So with working with the musical intervals, John Beaulieu has developed a number of protocols for helping various conditions. These protocols involve using 2 tuning forks in the unweighted harmonic spectrum set and are based on a combination of musical intervals. A good way of doing this is to tap 2 forks separately and bring them close to the ears. You kind of start out away from the ears and you bring them in. You're going to do that 3 times, then you're going to swap hands, tap them again, and bring them close to the ears again, repeating that 3 times. By doing this in both ears and sides, and sides of the brain receive equal treatment. This can be done for yourself, with a client sitting in a chair, with a client lying down. In your printed material, you're going to have a lot of different protocols here, and these are the protocols that John Bolio came up with through studying. I'm going to give you a couple in here, but please read through the rest. And I would also encourage you to intuitively make up your own intervals. If you have a client that has something going on and you don't see a protocol here, really think about what you're doing. And if you're musically inclined or you really want to kind of mess around, experiment, make up your own intervals. The world is your oyster in all of this. These things are just guides, okay? So for nervous system balance and well-being, you're going to start out with the C and G. So you're going to hold the C in your left hand, the G in your right hand. You're going to activate them, hold them up to the ears 3 separate times. You want to hold the tuning forks up to the ears until just before you feel that vibration stop. Then you're going to move them away from the ears, activate them again, bring them back till just before that vibration stops, and you're going to do that 3 times. Then you're going to switch hands and you're going to do the C and G in the opposite ear. Then you're going to move the C back to your left hand and pick up the F. You're going to repeat that process again 3 times, switch hands. You're going to move the C back to your left hand, pick up the A, do that all again. Then move the C back to your left hand, do the C and G, switch hands. And that's for balancing the nervous system and well-being. If you want to help calm anxiety, you would do low C, high C, low C left hand, high C right hand, switch, do it. Move the low C back to your left hand, pick up the F, then the G, then the F again. For digestive balance, you would do CE, CF, low C, high C, C and G. And there are many, many, many other protocols out there. I did list you all the ones that I could find that John Bolio had created in the material that you have for printing off for this module, okay? So that is unweighted tuning forks. Again, please watch my instructional video. I show you how I play the unweighted through the energy field. I show you how I play them next to the ears. I give you some tips. So, definitely look into that, okay? So the next thing we're going to get into is weighted tuning forks. I love these. Weighted tuning forks look like this. They have this weight that's molded at the top. In old school tuning forks, you actually used to be able to adjust the weights, but I would imagine that by adjusting the weights, you're adjusting the pitch or the frequency. I might be wrong about that, but most of the weighted tuning forks that you're going to find today, the weights are like put in place. So you can use weighted tuning forks singularly or in pairs on the body. The extra weights molded onto the end of the tines create a stronger vibration than unweighted forks, which is transferred to the tissues and bones through the stem of the fork when it is placed on the body. These forks do not sound as much as unweighted forks. They don't sound as much as unweighted forks, but you feel the vibration in the handle more than the unweighted forks. Weighted forks were first developed by John Bolio, who called them osteophonic or otto forks, OTTO forks, and they're available in 3 frequencies, 128, 64, and 32 hertz. The really cool thing is if you're a massage therapist, at the place where I buy my tuning forks, it's a place called Soma Energetics. These weighted tuning forks, you can use these. They have a CEU class. So because you can use these on the body, massage therapists can get CEUs for doing these. So that's pretty cool. So these weighted tuning forks produce frequencies that have low notes. When the forks are placed on certain bones, such as the sacrum, the client can often hear the note through their body as well as feel the vibrations. Weighted tuning forks are sounded by tapping the flat side of the weights on your knee, palm, or your hand, or a rubber activator. They're usually tapped one at a time and are not tapped together as the weights interfere with the production of overtones. You are going to have a table in here that explains the uses and benefits of the 3 weighted tuning forks, and I also go over that in my video. But so 128 hertz you can place on and around stiff and painful joints. You can place on the chakras, place on the left and right anterior superior iliac spine. And the benefits of this is it reduces pain in joints, increases joint mobility, spikes nitric oxide, stimulates endocrine glands, releases the psoas muscle, and relaxes organs within the pelvis. 64 hertz you place on the sacrum to balance the autonomic and nervous system. This produces better sleep, reduced aches and pains, lifting depression, overcoming sexual and menstrual dysfunctions, and improved immune system. You can also use these on the sciatic nerve. You can use these on the back, the 64 hertz. This is just a really great fork. And then the 32 hertz, this is a very, very long fork, and it is moved just off the skin to stimulate and balance peripheral nerves and the flow of lymph. And you can also use it on the skull along the cranial sutures. And this can, help to overcome headaches and body aches, pains, mood swings. They repair peripheral nerves damaged by environmental toxins and mechanical injuries. And you can also improve lymphatic drainage and detoxification of the immune system with this. And I also show you how to use this in the instructional video. So for a tuning fork session, let's kind of go through that. So tuning forks are best incorporated into the middle of a sound healing session before the grounding. For me, that's in the beginning of my sessions. When I start out a sound healing session, I always start out with taking deep breaths. I kind of walk you down through a relaxation like I do in the middle of a meditation. And then once I have that client grounded, I will start out with tuning forks in the aura. I will then use the tuning forks next to the ears. Then I use weighted tuning forks, and then I use the tuning forks in the aura again. And then I start my individual sound healing with crystal bowls, with all of the other stuff. This is how John Bolio lays out how he believes that you should do your session as well. So if tuning forks are the only instrument you're going to use, then you of course would use them through the whole session. With most other instruments used in sound healing, the client lies on their back, face up, either on a mat on the floor or a massage table. With tuning forks, this position can be used for many applications and techniques, but for some, it is necessary to ask your client to roll over onto their front. That would be when you want to use the tuning forks on their back, spine, sacrum, and rear pelvis. So you would use the weighted tuning forks, say that they have sciatic nerves, or they're having back problems, or problems around their shoulder blades, or things like that. You would have them flip over. It's easier to do on a massage table because you can have the face cradle. But if you're going to do things on the backside of the body, make sure that you have something where the client can turn over. And you also want to make sure that the client can breathe easily, they're not straining their necks. And also you want to make sure that you're not straining too much to do this work, because if you do, then you're going to get burned out. You will always want to begin by grounding yourself and your client. I always stand and picture myself with roots in the ground. I have my client visualize a bubble of protection around them. I have a bubble of protection around me. I do a connection exercise with my clients. I want to get them in a good space. I want me in a good space, and I want us to connect in some way before we get everything going. I sound unweighted tuning forks off the body in the subtle energy fields. This could be 1, 2, or more forks, either alone or in combination. They can be tapped separately or together. Next, I use unweighted tuning forks close to the ears. This can be based on a protocol or your intuition. Then you're going to use weighted tuning forks as appropriate on the body. You will then do a full off-the-body sweep with however many forks you feel are appropriate, commonly including the low C, beginning at the head and ending at the feet to ground the client. And this is with unweighted tuning forks. And then you're going to end, I usually end, by having my client take a few deep breaths in and out, and I walk them through some things and get them reconnected back to the world around them, and then I finish up my session. It is then good to complete the sound healing session with playing other grounding instruments if you feel like you have them or want to. Remember that as with all instruments, it is also good to create periods of stillness and silence while working with tuning forks. I do this in my crystal bowl sessions and my full-on sound baths as well. There's so much power in silence and a little bit of space. It can easily be achieved in the transitions from one interval to another or from one type of fork to another. So don't feel like you have to rush and fill up every second with sound, because you do not, okay? Sometimes, again, there's a certain power in that silence. Some contraindications for tuning forks. There's not many. Do not use weighted tuning forks directly on the bones of people who have a history of osteoporosis or who have a bone fracture. This is because the vibration of the fork causes the bones to vibrate, and that can cause pain. Also, if a client experiences pain when pressing a tuning fork onto a bone, then you should stop pressing the fork to the bone, or they have these little rubber balls, which I do show you in the instructional video, these little rubber balls that you can stick on the end that softens that point and softens that vibration, especially when you're working like on the sciatic nerve or things like that. It can be really tender and very activated, those nerves. So again, they have these little rubber balls that you can stick on the end that help kind of soften that. Do not use a weighted fork on the body in the area of the heart if the client has a pacemaker. Do not place tuning forks on the body where there are metal implants, as this may cause the metal to vibrate, which can be painful. Avoid placing tuning forks on the body of pregnant women or women who are hoping to become pregnant, especially in the first 3 months. You know, there's a lot of speculation about the pregnant women thing. You know, I kind of read varying degrees of this, whether you should or you shouldn't. You know, use your intuition, use your common sense. I don't know. I feel like I have sound healing sessions where women of all varying degrees of pregnancy are coming to me for my sound healing. I don't know that I necessarily, you know, you're not going to use the tuning forks on their belly, you know, stay away from things like that. But I don't know that I necessarily agree that you can't use tuning forks on pregnant women. In all of these cases, playing tuning forks off the body should not cause any complications. So if you have a pregnant person come to you, maybe just do the unweighted forks around the body and into the ears without placing any weighted forks on the body. Tuning forks can complement your existing sound tools as well as add a new dimension of possibilities to individual clients and yourself. Tuning forks are very versatile and effective instruments for healing, transforming, and awakening to our full potential. They have the advantage of making quiet sounds, so they are very unobtrusive. This makes them ideal instruments in places such as some therapy clinics where louder sounds are not welcome. As they are small and weigh so little, they take up little space in a healing room and can easily be taken to other locations, including home visits. If you feel a pull to learn more about tuning forks, there are so many classes available to you from places all over the world. I am taking classes from the UK right now. There are lots of classes here. So explore, learn, research, have fun. The world is your oyster. So just to give you a couple of additional resources, I buy my forks at a place called Soma Energetics. They're a US-based company with quality forks. They also offer training videos and CEUs. If you're into reading, Human Tuning, Sound Healing with Tuning Forks by John Bolio is a good one. Tuning Fork Therapy Level 1 Manual by Francine Milford. There is The Tao of Sound, Acoustic Sound Healing for the 21st Century by Fabian Mamon and Therese Unsoeld. And, there's some other books, The Power of Sound and The 7 Secrets of Sound Healing. They have a few pages on sound healing if there's something that you want to read more into. So I would really encourage you to read through all of this material that you have printed off in your module, and then please watch the instructional video. I do not take you through a full session because that would be a long video, but I do definitely incorporate just different things going on, different things, different ways to use the forks. I show you how I lay out my forks. I show you how I play them through the energy body towards the ears. I show how you use them on the body. So please feel free to check that video out and refer back to it anytime you need to. Also, if you have any questions, anything at all, you guys have my information, so feel free to reach out to me anytime. Tuning forks have become a real big passion of mine, and I would be happy to help you however I can. So thank you so much for joining me in this module. Hop online, learn, take a class, read a book. There's so much out there to dive into, and I really hope that you really incorporate tuning forks into your life, because you won't be sorry. Thank you so much for joining me in this module. We'll talk to you soon.